Good morning, I'm Roland Martin. Next on News One Now, breaking news out of Chicago. An iconic magazine sold. That's right, Ebony and Jet magazine have been sold. We'll talk to Desiree Rogers, who is the CEO of Johnson Publishing, as to why they made the decision to get out of the publishing big business. Democrats unite. President Barack Obama, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton come out swinging to defend themselves against Donald Trump's anti-Muslim rhetoric. We'll talk on our panel. Also, what is the obsession with O.J. Simpson? A new documentary explores the O.J. Simpson trial. Another one, taking a hard look at how this case was pivotal when it came to race relations in the United States. Also, folks, let's deal with this whole issue here, and that is what's going on in terms of Orlando. The wife of the killer says that she helped him buy ammunition, scouted the location, and she didn't tell anybody. And also, why are we so focused on radical Islam? Could we really be dealing with somebody who was really simply a closeted gay man? Is that really the focus? Also, the United States of Women Summit took place in D.C. We'll give you those details and more. It's time to bring the funk on News One Now, TV One. Folks, breaking news out of Chicago. Johnson Publishing, they have sold the iconic magazines Ebony and Jet to a private equity firm out of Texas. 71 years after the founding of these iconic publications that chronicle the life of African Americans, they are no longer being owned by the Johnson family. A deal for an undisclosed amount puts the favorites, of course, in the hands of Clearview Group, based in Austin, Texas. Ebony, of course, which celebrated Black life and culture since 1945, is still distributed a widespread 1.2 million monthly subscription. Jet magazine is now a digital magazine. Let's go right to the phone lines with Desiree Rogers. She is the CEO of Johnson Publishing Company. She joins us right now. Desiree, Linda Johnson Rice, chair of Johnson Publishing, daughter of the founder, John H. Johnson and Eunice Johnson. How did you arrive at this decision to sell the magazine after being in the Johnson hands for 7 decades?
Good morning, Roland. How are you?
Doing great.
Yes. So first of all, Linda will be chairman emeritus of the new company and will still have an ownership position in that company and sit on the board of the company. So it was bittersweet. It was definitely a very difficult decision. But as you know, we've got a couple of other pieces of business associated with Johnson Publishing, which is the cosmetics business. And then we also have our archives. And so we felt that it was extremely important that capital, and these guys will be putting up capital to continue to grow that business. So one of the big decisions was, how do we continue to grow Ebony and Jet and make them viable moving forward in the future?
And when you talk about an ownership stake, is it majority ownership? Is it 80-90%?
I'm not gonna. We can't talk about that. You know that.
No. Well, a lot of times the information is released, so I got to ask the question.
Sure.
The magazine industry certainly has been hit significantly by digital, by still television. I mean, so many things have been changing, and that has been a difficult for magazine companies. Period. But still, being a 2 magazine company also was even more difficult in this competitive landscape.
Absolutely, but so what we feel we've done is been able to ensure the future, and can continue to publish the magazine, at the same time see additional investment in the brands, whether that be the digital platforms that are associated with the 2 magazines, or also, as you know, I think you've been there, our Power 100 that celebrates the 100 most powerful Black Americans, to be able to continue to grow that business and invest in the business. And so it's an African-American group out of Austin, and we're delighted to be able to, as I said, be able to extend and be able to to really make certain that these brands are invested in and that they survive.
So for the folks so Lyndon Johnson Rice will be chair emeritus, still have an ownership stake, and then Cheryl McKissick will become CEO of this particular media group.
Right, and Cheryl has been working with us all along as the COO of Johnson Publishing. And so, you know, there are changes, but at the same time, many of the things that we're familiar with are staying the same.
And also, you also are maintaining Johnson Publishing's name, and under that particular name will still be Fashion Fair as well as the archives?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so this will allow both of the brands to grow into the future. Very difficult to do both. Here we've got making certain that Ebony and Jet are set up for the future and that Fashion Fair is set up for the future. It takes capital to run these businesses, and that's what's important, and it's important that we maintain Mr. Johnson's legacy and ensure that both of these businesses have the capital, support, the people behind them to move on to the future, into the next generation.
All right, then. We surely appreciate it. Desiree Rogers, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Folks, let's move on to what's happening in Orlando, where more details are emerging, troubling details about Omar Mateen, the man who opened fire at an Orlando gay nightclub, killing 49 people, injuring more than 50 others. Authorities are questioning his wife, Nora Salman. They believe she was with Mateen when he purchased the ammunition used in the attack. They say she also drove him past the shooting site so that he could scope out the Pulse Club. The couple has a 3-year-old son, and they live in Port St. Lucie, Florida, about 2 hours away from the club. We also have a number of people who have continued to come out and suggest that Mateen was an active participant on a gay dating site, a gay dating app, often went to the club. And so much attention has been focused on him making a call to 911, pledging allegiance to ISIS, when previously he had pledged allegiance to a group that opposed ISIS. And so here's a real question. Should the focus actually be on this guy being a closeted gay man as opposed to somehow thinking this is all about Islam? Let's go right to our panel. We have a variety of folks here. I want to get right to it. John Christopher Abua, who joins us right now. Of course, longtime White House correspondent. I call him world traveler, the world's most interesting man. Ali Velshi, also the world's most interesting man. My homeboy here. Worked together for so many years at CNN. Rich Galen, GOP strategist, columnist at Mullings.com. Lauren Victoria Burke, managing editor at Politic365.com. Ralph Chittum, senior vice chair of the D.C. Republican Party. All right, folks, this is what I find to be interesting in looking at this case. I see all these folks going back and forth, and in the first 24 hours, oh my goodness, ISIS is trying to attack America, and as always happens, the next 24 hours begins to reveal something different. Now, all of a sudden, it's as if media doesn't even want to really deal with the fact that this could be the case. And Cleo Monago, who's on this show 2 days ago, he said something smelled about this story. He said he saw a couple of guys kissing 2 months ago. You held on it for 2 months. Cleo said, this sounds like a guy who was holding something inside who probably was gay. And he threw it out there, now all of a sudden it comes out. That, to me, seems to be a different focus, and folks don't really want to get into that.
Well, it is actually sort of changing. The story is sort of changing in that direction. It actually looks as if he might have used the ISIS thing as sort of a cover for what he felt was shame being gay. So whatever the case, who can figure it out? But the president did bring up again the fact that there is no evidence of a direct link between ISIS and Omar Mateen, which I think is really the more important point. But obviously, for a lot of people, they just sort of turn it into a ideological fight immediately and a thing about ISIS, but there's no proof of it.
Well, I'm a political analyst, Roland. I'm not a psychoanalyst. But I could tell you, it just goes to show you how terribly complex people are in their pathology. Right. And the fact that this guy could get hold of a gun, like he did, and do the damage that he did, doesn't matter if he's gay, straight, or all the above. However, the interesting thing is, it's all about Democrats against NRA. Anybody can get any kind of weapon in America, anytime, anywhere. Right. That's the problem. And the real deep problem is what's going on in this country as we speak.
But don't we do a disservice, though, if we pursue the radical Islamic line as opposed to say, wait a minute,
I think the disservice is in trying to drop a veil of simplicity over something that's complex. This has at least 3 or 4 layers of complexity.
Absolutely.
Whether it's homophobia, whether the guy himself was gay, this business of pledging allegiance to ISIS, which any of us can do in a phone call that requires no communication or plotting. Does that mean that it's ISIS? It's ISIS inspired, or does that mean I say so? And by the way, ISIS is going to have a lot of complexity around this too, because they don't go for the gay people. They throw them off of buildings and they kill them. So they've already praised this brother Mateen for doing what he did. All of a sudden they're going to have to reassess well, we don't have a gay brother Mateen. So this is it does us a disservice, and some of the times it comes from the media, but it does us a disservice to rush into what we think this is when, as you said, it's the human mind. It's complex. This is probably multifaceted, and we won't solve it if we just decide to label it one thing.
Go ahead.
But in all of these situations, even with Dylan Roof, there's never just one issue.
Right.
But American society, we've gotten to the point where we want to reduce everything to just the lowest common denominator, and then we're going to say that's it.
Yeah.
And in no situation can we say it's just one thing. All of these things are nuanced and multifaceted, and until we're honest and we're willing to deal with that, we're going to be easily separated and divided by those who want to craft a narrative that points to one thing and say that's it.
And Rich, in terms of this whole political battle, when, again, if you just step back and actually breathe for a second, as other folks have said, it is complex, and I think if we try to quickly reduce it to left, right, red, blue, Republican, Democrat, keep them out, survey them in the country, then we're really losing our focus, and we do a disservice to the public by not really confronting what I think is real issue.
Well, I mean, we've all, everybody on this panel, including you, have done TV for a long time, and TV doesn't lend itself to long, complex investigations. It lends itself exactly to what you're talking about. It's left, right, up, down, good, bad. And that's what, and especially when you've got to fill, 24 hours a day, 4.5 minutes at a time. Right. I mean, you're looking for people.
People who are not experts on any of these things are called to make fast judgments. And one of the benefits of being a former employee of an organization is I got to watch all this on TV and watch it unfold. And I watched really good people being put on the spot and asked, what do you think it was? What do you think motivated him? What do you think motivated him? And the net result is you don't want to look like an idiot, so you say what you think you've just read, and it turns out you have no evidence of that, and you do a disservice because we don't actually look at what might the several things that motivated this killer or motivates anybody to do anything
politicians and the media are partners in crime on that, because the politicians come out with the ideological statements and the media doesn't come back and say, well, wait a minute, isn't it a little bit more exactly? Where's your evidence for that? And you got to challenge people into the more complex thing that Ralph brought up.
But go ahead, John.
For 6 years, I taught at Georgetown, a course called Politics and the Media. I've been teaching at Catholic right down the road in the fall, and I tell my students 2 things: as citizens, hold the media's feet to the fire, hold your politicians' feet to the fire, and remember what JFK said. In a democracy, we are the boss, and we get the kind of leadership we deserve and that we ask for and we fight for.
But one of the reasons why also I think this line of questioning is important is because we, as a society, we have to confront the reality of what people go through who are conflicted about being gay. Here's a guy who was Muslim. If you look at the comments from his imam, look at the comments from his father, then now all of a sudden, when you see the app, when you hear the interviews, we hear people say, oh no, I got the private messages. I mean, again, that's one of those things. So it's not like he's the only person out there who is conflicted. I'm not saying somebody who's saying, oh, it's tough being gay, I'm gonna run out there, I'm gonna kill 50 people. But it does force us to have a different kind of conversation that I don't think we really wanna have. If it's like, hey, if I can just focus on radical Islam, we're good.
Well, some people don't want to have that, but quite frankly, the fact
I think a lot of people.
We have some people on TV, I think, that had the conversation quite well. Anderson Cooper had the conversation well. Rachel Maddow had the conversation really well. That's a nuanced conversation. I think the bigger point.
I'm speaking abroad. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger point too is that we can't just take one person, whether it's terrorism, whether it's homosexuality or anything else, and say, okay, because this one person did something, we're going to extrapolate out all of these other commonalities. That's another big mistake.
Everybody who's struggling with being gay is now a danger to society.
Right,
But also,
exactly.
let's take this situation. Let's take it back to Dylan Roof. Everybody wants to say he's a bigot. Take out the Confederate flag, reduce it to the lowest common denominator. There are other issues with this kid, but we can't, no one in any situation is operating on just one track.
But Dylan Roof was a bigot.
But there were other things going on with him, and if we just stick to the fact that
I
he
think
was a
there's always
bigot to
something
the
else going
exclusion
on,
of
right?
everything
And there's always an
else,
element of
we're
truth in
doing
most
the same
things.
thing with that case that you don't want done with this guy because he was a homosexual Muslim.
No. I think it's crystal clear. First of all, Roof is still alive, unlike Mateen. We know exactly whether, because we have his writings and he had the interview as well. So I think Roof is a heck of a lot more clear. Anybody can be unstable. You kill 9 folks in a church, but his racist past and his racist present, I think, was real clear. Hold tight 1 second. I got to go to a break. When we come back, we'll have our headlines. Plus, we're going to deal with the issue of Obama, Trump, what's going on. They don't quite like each other. We'll explain all of that right here. News 1 Now, TV 1.